Welcome to Weekly News Highlights, where we wrap up your week with a glimpse back into what went on over the past week. I'm Kim Dami in Seoul. North Korea continued to lash out at South Korea and make threats this week, in which the South vowed payback, which will be the multiple times stronger. In the meantime, Russia and North Korea vowed to further upgrade their cooperation in all areas, including, quote, sensitive ones. South Korea plans to build a semiconductor mega cluster in Gyeonggi-do Province by 2047. South Korea's financial authorities also unveiled a set of tax reforms in favor of investors at a policy discussion led by the president. The Samsung Electronics Galaxy Unpacked series returned this year with its very first AI smartphones. A live translation feature and searches using a simple finger circle motion are among the top features. It was another rocky week here on the Korean Peninsula, with leader Kim Jong-un threatening to ink South Korea as the regime's #1 hostile country in its constitution. In fact, it's now gotten rid of its agencies in charge of inter-Korean cooperation and dialogue, further moving away from the South. Our Kim Jong-sil starts us off.
Yet another hostile remark from North Korea's leader. During a key meeting of North Korea's Supreme People's Assembly on Monday, leader Kim Jong-un said his regime needs to firmly define South Korea as the #1 hostile country and an unchangeable enemy of the North. Kim went on to say that the constitutional amendment must include the issue of fully occupying South Korea and incorporating it into the North's territory in the event of a war. According to the state-run Rodong-Sinmun newspaper, Kim said the regime's education and cultural sectors must promote these ideas. Pyongyang also announced that it was closing down the National Committee for the Peaceful Reunification of the Fatherland, as unification will never be realized. The committee worked as a counterpart to South Korea's Unification Ministry. In addition, the agency in charge of the Mount Kumgang tourism project will be shut down. Mount Kumgang used to be one of the few places where South Koreans could visit the North legally. The Ministry of Unification released a statement on Tuesday saying the North's moves were a political provocation seeking to create divisions in South Korean society. It added that the so-called Two Koreas theory promulgated by the North defied the long history of Koreans living together and was an anti-national and anti-historical act that threatened these same people with nuclear weapons. Chun Ha-gyu, a Ministry of National Defense spokesperson, also commented on the issue.
North Korea's intentions of using force to unify South Korea have never changed, as it continues to carry out various provocations to this day. Our military is facing this head-on and maintains a firm mental and military readiness.
Regarding the northern limit line, the de facto sea border between the two Koreas that Kim refuses to recognize, Chun added that this would be protected at all costs. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
And South Korea fired back at the North immediately. President Yoon Suk-yeol warned the North of punishment multiple times stronger should the regime stage a provocation. Our presidential office correspondent Kim Do-yeon has this report.
Just hours after North Korea's state media reported on Kim Jong-un's decision to constitutionally label South Korea as the regime's #1 hostile country, President Yoon Suk-yeol didn't shy away when hitting back with remarks of his own.
이는 북한 정권 스스로가 반민족적이고 반역사적 집단이라는 사실을 자인한 것입니다.
On the contrary, South Korea's constitution says the nation's territory is all of the Korean peninsula and that it shall seek peaceful unification based on democratic order. The comments came at a planned cabinet meeting where the president usually broadcasts his opening statements live. There he also reiterated that the nation is ready to retaliate against any provocation, multiple times stronger. And referring to the statement that Pyongyang will not be recognizing the northern limit line, the de facto inter-Korean maritime border, Yoon said it's an attempt to make people anxious and divide South Korea. In fact, he called for unity to fight against the propaganda.
전쟁이냐 평화냐를 협박하는 재래의 위장 평화 전술은 더 이상 통하지 않습니다. 우리 국민과 정부는 하나가 되어 북한 정권의 기만 전술과 선전선동을 물리쳐 나아가야 합니다.
And amidst the exchange of harsh words, he underscored that the true threat is not the people of North Korea, but its regime.
북한 주민들은 우리와 똑같이 자유와 인권과 번영을 누릴 권리를 가진 우리와 같은 민족입니다. 우리는 이들을 따뜻하게 포용해 나가야 합니다.
And despite North Korea's deciding to shut down all agencies related to inter-Korean relations, President Yoon ordered for more work to be done by South Korea's Unification Ministry. Specifically, he said the nation will do more to help North Korean defectors settle in South Korea and said the ministry needs to legally designate a day to celebrate the North Korean defectors. He also called on the foreign ministry to cooperate with the global community to help and protect the defectors. Kim Dami, Arirang News.
And South Korea's efforts to cut off North Korea's sources for its nuclear and missile development continue. As of Wednesday, 11 ships, 2 individuals, and 3 entities have now been placed on South Korea's blacklist for their illegal activities that have technically fed the North's pursuit of weapons. Now, such sanctions on vessels are the first of their kind in 8 years. Our Peunji has more.
South Korea said it would independently impose a new set of sanctions on North Korea as it seeks to prevent the regime's illicit maritime activities and squeeze its funding sources. Newly added to the blacklist are 11 ships, 2 individuals, and 3 entities involved in activities that violate UN Security Council resolutions, such as maritime transfers with North Korean vessels and the import of refined oil or coal smuggling to the north. Seoul's foreign ministry said Wednesday that North Korea has been procuring materials and funds, including oil, through these activities in order to develop its nuclear and missile programs. It also said this is the first time in about 8 years that the government is imposing sanctions on ships since March 2016. Of the 11 ships placed on the list, South Korea is the first country to issue sanctions on 9 of them. With the sanctions now in place, the captain of these ships must have domestic entry approval from the regulatory authority before entering South Korea. As for the blacklisted individuals and entities, those wishing to engage in financial transactions with them must obtain permission from the governor of the Bank of Korea or the Financial Services Commission. The latest sanctions come just 3 days after North Korea fired an intermediate-range ballistic missile, which could be capable of targeting U.S. military bases in Guam or Japan. The regime claimed the next day that it has successfully tested a solid-fuel missile carrying a hypersonic warhead, which makes such missiles harder to intercept. Pyongyang has been raising tensions on the Korean peninsula in recent weeks, with its leader Kim Jong-un saying that he has no intention of avoiding war with South Korea. Peunji, Arirang News.
North Korea's top diplomat Choi Sun-hee visited Moscow this week, which appears to have worked as a leverage to consolidate the regime's ties with Russia. The two sides reportedly agreed to make extra cooperation efforts in all possible areas. Our Choi Soo-hyung covered the story.
North Korea and Russia are looking to strengthen their ties during North Korean Foreign Minister Choi Sun-hee's visit to Moscow. They have discussed enhancing bilateral relations in all areas, including sensitive areas, according to Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov on Wednesday. No specific details were given regarding the sensitive areas, but they seem to involve military cooperation. Military cooperation between Moscow and Pyongyang has been deepening since the 2022 invasion of Ukraine, with the North providing arms to Russia in exchange for Russia providing technical assistance. North Korea has expressed a proactive stance in joint actions, particularly on the Korean peninsula. The Kremlin called the North its closest neighbor and partner.
We confirm our principled position supporting the inclusive and fair resolution of existing problems. We have always supported the start of negotiations without preconditions in order to work for lasting peace and stability throughout Northeast Asia.
Moreover, the two have agreed to cooperate on food supply, mining development, and cultural exchanges. According to the officials, Russia will supply North Korea with food like corn, and the North will cooperate with Russia on the extraction of minerals such as gold and rare earth elements. Also, Pyongyang will permit group tourism for Russians starting February, marking the first time it will allow tourists in 4 years since its lockdown due to the COVID-19. Putin's potential visit to Pyongyang may have also been discussed, but was not mentioned publicly. Choi Hyung, Arirang News.
U.S. President Joe Biden said this week his country will not yet end airstrikes against the Houthis as the rebel group continues its attacks in the Red Sea. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu once again reiterated his opposition to the creation of a Palestinian state in any post-war scenario. Lee Seung-jae has more.
U.S. President Joe Biden said Thursday that a U.S. offensive against the Houthis will continue, as he noted that the Yemeni rebel group has not stopped their attacks against commercial ships in the Red Sea. The comments come as the U.S. conducted a fifth round of strikes on Yemen on Thursday after a U.S. ship was attacked by a Houthi drone. Washington says the string of attacks against the rebel group were defensive in nature and that it does not seek war. Amid growing conflict between Iran and Pakistan, the White House says the U.S. does not want to see an escalation in clashes between the two countries. White House National Security Council spokesman John Kirby said Thursday that it does not want to see an escalation in South and Central Asia, adding that the U.S. has been in touch with Pakistan. The conflict began when Iran conducted strikes against militant groups in Pakistan's Balochistan province, which resulted in the deaths of 2 children and injuries to several more people. Pakistan responded with attacks of their own. Over in Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu rejected U.S. calls to scale back Israel's military offensive in the Gaza Strip. The Prime Minister on Thursday also stressed that Israel categorically opposes the establishment of a Palestinian state after the war. The comment drew ire from Washington, who said the two allies are not on the same page regarding Gaza issues. Meanwhile, the European Parliament called for a permanent ceasefire in Gaza, but added that it must be conditional on Hamas releasing the hostages it took in the October 7th attacks, as well as the full demilitarization of Gaza. Responding to the passage of the vote, Israel's ambassador to the EU said Israel is happy to see that the European Parliament understands the need to release the hostages and disarm Hamas before any ceasefire. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Artificial intelligence is drumming up excitement across the global economy, and Samsung Electronics is joining the wave. Its new Galaxy S24 series take to the next level with AI. Joining me to unpack those is our business correspondent, Shin-Hayoung. Welcome back, Hayoung.
Great to be here, Dami.
So, Hayoung, let's talk more about the Galaxy Unpacked event for the 2024 edition. What is it all about?
Well, the South Korean tech giant introduced the Galaxy S24 series in California on Wednesday local time, which it claimed to be the world's first AI smartphone. And just as CES 2024 was all about AI, so too was the unveiling of the Galaxy S24. And this lineup includes the S24, the S24 Plus, and the S24 Ultra, boasting various functions backed by artificial intelligence. Take a listen.
As mobile devices become the primary access point for AI, Samsung Galaxy will be an open gateway for secure and meaningful AI experiences on a global scale.
Hayoung, we have to talk about some of the eye-catching functions for users out there.
Well, the most significant feature is the on-device AI, which allows users to enjoy the cutting-edge technology of generative AI without connection to the cloud. The Galaxy S24 series comes with the Live Translate, providing two-way, real-time voice and text translations during phone calls, breaking down language barriers. No third-party apps are required, and on-device AI ensures complete privacy for conversations. In collaboration with Google, Samsung has introduced the Circle to Search feature. While browsing the web or using social media, users can simply draw a circle on the screen to search for the information instantly without the need to switch to other apps.
So the real-time translation feature, it definitely sounds handy. Now, on top of that, camera quality and editing tools have also garnered some attention. How does AI support these functions then?
Well, thanks to AI, the camera quality has improved compared to the previous model. And with upgraded features like nightography, photos and video shot are clear even when using the zoom feature in low light environments such as at night. And with its Galaxy AI editing tools, it can also fill in parts of an image background. If an object needs a slight adjustment, AI allows users to move the subject and generates a perfectly blended background in its original spot. And the S24 Ultra is priced from $1,300 US. The S24 Plus will cost $1,000 and the S24 will retail at $800. And the series will be available in stores across the world from January 31st.
Then, Hayoung, I want to know how the market and possible users are reacting to the new model, Samsung's first AI smartphone.
Well, there are some views that have questioned the need for AI smartphones, expressing concerns about whether on-device AI can offer truly new experiences, especially given that numerous useful apps already exist in our daily life. However, one expert says it differs from existing services. Take a listen.
The fact that AI services are provided more quickly, even in offline environments, adds unique appeal. Now, the question is how widely this new experience will spread. I expect that AI smartphones will introduce a whole new dimension, fostering widespread adoption.
Then, Hayoung, I have to ask you, how will Samsung's first AI smartphone really affect its competition against Apple's iPhone?
Well, first, we can definitely say that the emergence of AI smartphones is expected to create a new paradigm in the global smartphone market. And last year, Apple claimed a top spot in smartphone shipments. According to the International Data Corporation, Apple had a market share of a little over 20%. This was the first time that Apple had overtaken Samsung for smartphone shipments. Samsung recorded 19.4%, losing the top spot for the first time in 13 years. And with Samsung's latest AI smartphones, there's growing anticipation that the South Korean tech giant will regain the lead. A research firm Counterpoint Research forecasts AI smartphone shipments for this year to surpass 100 million units, with other firms including Apple likely to enter the AI smartphone market. Let's take a listen to what the expert had to say.
The collaboration between Google Gemini and the Galaxy S24 series will get a lot of attention. Samsung's chip design and manufacturing proficiency may give the company a long-term advantage in the market.
Well, last week, preliminary data for Samsung showed some disappointing profit figures for 2023. Can Samsung look forward to a recovery with the new Galaxy edition? What do you think?
Well, Samsung Electronics last year logged its lowest operating profit since the 2008 global financial crisis. And driven by sluggish semiconductor performance, it was down nearly 85% compared to the year before. So the Galaxy S24 series is regarded as a potential savior for the semiconductor business. This is because of the mobile application processor called Exynos 2400, known as the brain of smartphones. And Samsung is using the Exynos chipset again after 2 years without it. The Galaxy S22 series had overheating issue with the Exynos 2200 processor, leading the S23 series to feature Qualcomm's Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 instead. And expectations are high for this year's Galaxy series to break sales records, potentially accelerating the improvements in the semiconductor business.
All right, Hayoung, thank you so much for that coverage today.
Always my pleasure.
South Korea will build a semiconductor mega cluster in Gyeonggi-do Province by 2047. Now, to make that happen, over $472 billion will be poured in the grand project. Our Oh Soo-young has the details.
South Korea is betting on semiconductors to provide at least 3 million quality jobs by fostering the world's largest chip cluster by 2047. That's according to a policy briefing by the Ministers of Industry and Science to President Yoon Suk-yeol, who has been opening up a 10-part series of government reports to members of the public. With the third such session spotlighting semiconductors as the country's leading export item, the government pledged to back corporate-led efforts to foster a cutting-edge mega chip cluster in Gyeonggi-do Province, home to Samsung Electronics and SK hynix. The two global chip giants will invest over $472 billion as part of national efforts to add more foundries and memory chip plants across the 21-square-meter belt. The government plans to increase tax waivers for investment in chip facilities by up to 25%, as well as create research centres with leading academic institutions and nurture 150,000 professionals in the field.
Semiconductors translate to people's livelihoods. Once completed, a total of 37 fabs will give a major boost to the economy. The industry will create 3.46 million quality jobs, $492 billion in production, and $154 billion in extra sales for affiliated firms.
Upon completion, the cluster would boast a monthly production capacity of some 7.7 million wafers, the largest in the world. According to the government, semiconductors have been South Korea's #1 export item for 11 straight years and make up around 10% of the trade-dependent country's gross domestic product. The president on Monday said building a chip ecosystem would enrich people's livelihoods and also determine the country's economic security going forward.
우리가 평소에 그걸 잘 못 느낄 수 있어요. 이게 반도체 공장이 만들어지면서 거기에 따른 이런 생태계가 조성이 되고 전후방 이런 동반 투자 효과가 생겨서 우리에게 이런 일자리가 생기는 건지 못 느끼는 경우가 많이 있습니다만은 반도체라는 것은 그만큼 우리 일반 국민들, 중산층, 서민들의 민생에 엄청난 영향을 주는 산업이라는 것을 우리가 잘 알아야 될 것 같습니다. 그러다 보니까 지금 선진국들은 이런 반도체 메가 클러스터를 구축하기 위해서 아주 치열한 전쟁을 벌이고 있습니다.
To become a first mover in cutting-edge chip technology, Yoon called for all-out support, including sufficient electricity from nuclear energy to power the cluster. Large-scale fabrication plants in Yongin City alone are expected to require 10 gigawatts of electricity, equivalent to a quarter of the amount consumed in the Seoul capital area. The president also stressed the need for tax incentives, a wider pool of chip professionals, and collaborations with major chip producers in the global supply chain, referring to the administration's supply chain dialogue forged with the United States and Japan last year, as well as a semiconductor alliance with the Netherlands, the world's largest supplier of lithography machines. With the chip cluster up and running, the country aims to increase domestic production of key parts and equipment to 50% by 2030. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Then what is it that South Korea is so devoted to and investing so much in this mega chip cluster? And how realizable is South Korea's strategy to lead the global chip race? Our Lee Soo-jin has this report.
South Korea is gearing up to become #1 in the global semiconductor industry. The world's largest chip production base located in southern Gyeonggi-do Province will bring together chip equipment manufacturers, fabless chip producers, and R&D labs. By 2047, the mega cluster will have 13 chip production plants and 3 research facilities through investment amounting to 622 trillion won, or around $470 billion from private companies such as Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix. By 2030, the aim is to produce 7.7 million wafers, the base material for the chip manufacturing process, per month. And production of cutting-edge memory semiconductor technology such as high-bandwidth memory and sub-2 nanometer processor chips will also be possible at this base. What benefits can this singular large manufacturing base bring?
The government is trying to stabilize the semiconductor ecosystem, and this is a strategy to become #1 in both the memory and non-memory sectors before other advanced nations.
South Korea, a major player in the global memory chip maker sector, has been trying for years to expand its presence in the non-memory sector as it makes up a significant portion of the semiconductor market. The same expert said that becoming a forerunner in the non-memory sector will ultimately help stabilize the nation's semiconductor supply chain, also boosting the nation's overall economy as chips are South Korea's largest export item. But there are a lot of things to do until the mega cluster is up and running.
It's important to create a comprehensive solution where we don't just focus on attracting not just international firms, but also domestic small and medium-sized enterprises, especially those in the chip material, parts, and equipment sector.
The expert added that SMEs in the chip industry are also capable of providing the necessary infrastructure and expertise. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
And on Wednesday, South Korea's financial authorities unveiled a set of tax reforms in favor of investors at a policy discussion led by President Yoon. Capital gains tax on financial investments will be abolished as planned, while the tax on stock transactions will continue to go down. Our Moon Hae-ryun with details.
Cutting taxes on stock transactions in stages and offering interest payment refunds are just some of the reforms announced by the Financial Services Commission at a government policy briefing open to the public on Wednesday. President Yoon led the briefing and stressed the need to revitalize the capital market.
대한민국에는 글로벌 경쟁력을 갖춘 글로벌 기업들이 많이 있습니다만은 우리의 주식 시장은 매우 저평가되어 있습니다. 우리 시장 역시 다른 나라 시장과 경쟁하고 있기 때문에 글로벌 스탠다드에 맞지 않는 자본시장 규제를 과감하게 혁파해야 됩니다.
The first rung on the proposed ladder of financial opportunity comes in the form of scrapping the capital gains tax on income from financial investments that were due to be introduced next year. With its implementation, investors who earned more than a certain amount through stock investments would have to pay at least 20% tax, but now it's being dropped in a bid to boost investor sentiment. Lowering the stock transaction tax had been proposed as a means to combat the capital gains tax, but even with the latter being written off, it's still set to be lowered to 0.15% by 2025. Furthermore, the government will be carrying out a makeover to its individual saving account products as early as next month, by more than doubling the maximum limit on the non-taxable amount through the scheme, but also introducing a new type of ISA that's focused on domestic stock investments. Authorities predict that people will be able to see up to just over $1 million of tax benefits if they subscribe to an ordinary ISA for the minimum requirement of 3 years, which is more than double the amount before the reform. Other than tax reforms, the government has pledged to aid people in managing debt through interest reduction plans, especially for financially vulnerable groups such as self-employed workers and small business owners. Some 1.87 million such people who have taken out loans from banks will be eligible to receive up to 3 million won each in interest payment refunds. Another new policy that will be put into practice to help people start the new year on a new page is renewing overdue loan payment records. Up to 2.9 million people can improve their credit scores should they repay the full overdue amount by May this year. 문혜련, Arirang News.
That is all we have for this week. We thank you for watching Weekly News Highlights. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.